Understanding that as human beings, we are all programmed continually is an important place to start for you being able to operate from your authentic self. We have all taken on different things from different systems, from our upbringings, from our friends, from the content we consume that is programming us. And to operate from your authentic self, it is more a journey of dropping away the conditioning we've taken on. About 2 weeks ago, I had two little conditioned thoughts pop in that I got to see were like, that's a program. I didn't know I was still carrying that. And it's a humbling experience to know you are still programmed. There are still parts of you that are conditioned, and having them drop away is sort of exciting. It's easy to be like, I'm free from all of it. So, are you? Is anyone? But we can do our best to operate from ourselves, from our instincts, from our intuition, without the need to fit in and identify in certain groups. I've been a school teacher for the most part of the last decade, but the last few years only as a substitute, as I don't fit in with that system. And recently, now all I do is work with men and coach men. And the way they pump in belonging in the school system, I see as a really dangerous and deliberate psyop that they put on children at a really young age. They pump belonging into them at primary schools and at high schools, to the fact that if you don't pick a group to identify with, you'll feel weird, like you don't belong anywhere. As a man on this earth, that's about my smallest level of identification, is that I'm a man. I'm a man in the universe. Here, this is where I belong, with a connection to something higher. That's as far as I need to belong in my being. Any of the other groups that you identify with are pulling you away from your actual nature. Most people understand this when they look at normies. Yeah, they can see that people are just conditioned for wanting a 9 to 5, get a job, get a house, get a wife, have a kid. And none of these things are wrong. But when you're doing that, when you're just operating from the program that has been given to you, people are unable to access their authentic self and their actual power. And they can't understand that they are not free. If you paid attention during COVID, you would have seen the masterful psychological warfare that the powers that be have over people. It is truly unbelievable. It was a sight to see. I'd never paid much attention to worldly events. I just sort of lived my own path. But when my freedoms were taken away, I was like, this is not just. And I am proud of that. But to watch that all play out was truly unbelievable. And the only thing that these powers at be don't have is the connection to nature, God, the truth. And once you have a tether there, it can help you have strength to who you are, to not be pushed and pulled around by the negative influences in the world. Unfortunately, this push on belonging and the need to identify is making people choose groups and identifying groups and fit in within the parameters of that set group. And this pulls a person away from who they are. Now, the group that I mainly am working with is this spirituality scene. A lot of people wake up through their first conditioning and think now that they're free, but they jump into the next one. This is woke culture. Like this whole stuff the system, we can look ugly and have blue hair and there's no genders and all of this. They think they've woke up and they've gone anti the system. But unfortunately, that's just another brainwashed cult that you've jumped into that is completely indoctrinated by the system. And the spiritual scene is the one that many are jumping into, thinking it is the end game, where, oh, this is the one with all the people who've actually woke up. Now, there will be some in there that are, but for the most part, it's a scene. And the way the powers that be use mind control, they use trauma, fear, ignorance to prey on those parts of people, to lock them in to different little cults that are holding them back from being free. Trauma is a huge gateway for many people into the spirituality scene. And unfortunately, without having remedy on the trauma, some psychotherapy or some way of reaching that, when a person is traumatized, and this can be minute, the word trauma sounds like it's very full on, and it obviously can be, but I'm talking minuscule ways. It can lead a person away from their authentic self, and then they can cling on to this like bypassing or transcendence and following a false path. And this is how the powers that be use New Age spirituality to trap people into another cult that is holding them back. New Age spirituality is taking men away from their instincts and their essence. It is crippling to masculinity, because to fit into that group, a lot of it, as I said, when you're around a lot of people who are carrying shame or trauma, there is a way within that spirituality scene that everyone is welcome, which is great, but it'll soften people's edges, because a person who's sensitive can feel the trauma and things, and instead of being able to speak your truth, you're sort of playing in a game that has some rules, that you don't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable. And then the worst thing is when within this scene, there's like, this is spiritual, that's not spiritual. This is what conscious people do. That's not what conscious people do. Alcohol's not spiritual, but this is. You can do mushrooms, but not alcohol. And it's all these little identification traps that are ridiculous. As I've said, if you're on the path, it just all is. And I understand that this is a step. This is a step that I went through, that I see most of the real ones I know went through that phase. And it's cool. But you've got to understand you've been programmed and conditioned. We all have. We all are. And the process of becoming more connected to yourself and something higher is a letting go of the conditioning and programming. This is why when I work with men, it's all about bringing them back to their authentic self. Whatever path they choose from the core of who they are, it's up to them. It's free will. The laws of nature is pretty much down to don't do harm to others. Don't steal. Apart from that, we have a lot of free will. And the spirituality scene of like, this is conscious, this is not conscious. The word conscious doesn't even suit what I just said there. You can do anything consciously. Anything. Apart from if you're doing harm to others, there will be spiritual ramifications. The group identities are holding people back from their true nature. As I said, as a school teacher, they would pump belonging into kids so they choose some group to identify with where they belong. This is when you get the LGBTQ alphabet thing, and the wokies, and the this, and the that, and the spiritual, and the muso. It's like they try to trap you in a group rather than just being a part of the all. Being a part of like, I'm a man on this earth, under the universe, nature, God, whatever. This is where I belong. And you don't feel the need to jump in a set group. Unfortunately, the one where I'm focused is these spiritual identities and this path to be enlightened, or the awakened man, and shaming parts of yourself that don't fit in that criteria, rather than embracing the fullness of your humanness. Understanding you're a human here, and that power that you possess is probably in some of those funky bits that you have. and the conditions we put on ourselves through a group identity are causing damage to people. It was like last night I went to one, like a person's like, you want to come to a conscious party? And I was like, oh, I haven't been in one of these in a while. And it was so funny to just drop back in there and go, oh, this looks like when I was in the scene over there. Like it all looks the same. It all feels the same. Within your unique expression of yourself is the highest form. And when everyone looks the same and the scene's all the same, I'm always like, oh, I feel like to be a part of the scene, I need to be this way. And obviously there's real ones in all scenes. You can still, if you're into that, you go into that. You just don't identify it. And yeah, this is like the hero's journey, where you can individuate from all of it, and then you can play in all of it. You're still allowed to play wherever you are. There's just no need to identify with whatever you're doing. There's the worldly games, which you can play out, enjoy, thrive, push yourself, learn from them. And then there's the bigger game, which you're aware of, and using the world to go further into that one. We are all programmable. We are all programmed. We are all conditioned. And the spiritual conditioning that I see is the deepest, but that's probably just through my eyes because I was in it, and understanding and feeling, why isn't there this authentic spark? Where are the real ones? Why is there restraints and a feeling that people are being a certain way to fit in with a certain group? If there's a feeling of a lack of power, of a lack of like spark in you, it's generally because you've taken on a program that is taking you further away from who you are. There can obviously be limiting beliefs and shame around certain things, which can be excavated. But anything that is not allowing you to be your fullest self, which is generally yourself, is holding you back from stepping into your power and just embracing the fullness of life. And that can feel lonely when you stop identifying with the current group and thing you're in. But over time, you end up finding the real ones. And the real ones are there. The real ones are there that are happy to just watch that all play out. And there's no distaste or hatred. I remember like why I got so passionate about this set genre is because I was stuck there. So there's a part of me that looks at my old self and it's like, damn, why didn't you? But I've had to have remedy with that and go, no, this is an essential part. And I can see if I got stuck there for longer, it would have been really bad for me. That's why I'm passionate about just illuminating that even that spiritual trip has its own conditioning. And if you've taken it on and are adapting to certain parameters that are taking you further away from who you are, you're holding yourself back. It's an interesting journey, and it's cool to look back and see. And the men that I work with, it's funny how they have like such similar inner dialogues as I did in that stage. And it's good men who are doing a lot of work on themselves, but unfortunately that work is taking them further away from who they are. Within that scene, it's unfortunate. Men are always looking for role models, consciously or unconsciously. And when you move across to that scene, it might be like the guy at the top who's got the girl and they're doing the things and running the workshops or whatever. And this is all well and good. And as I said, there's some real ones there. But it's a heavily women-dominated sphere. And unfortunately, there's a lot of trauma there. And there's different ways of like communicating and doing things that are quite soft. And it can really dull the masculine spirit, especially if you're holding back your voice when you're seeing things that you would call out, but it's not the right space because we're all accepting from here. It's not like we walk around telling people where to go, but when you're in that group and you're really wanting to be there, but you're not able to express your fullest self, that hurts you, that weakens your flame, that pulls you away from your power. It's an act of self-sabotage when we don't say things because of others. And this happens in all groups. It's just the spiritual scene is the one I've identified as it's dear to my heart, and that I see how amazingly susceptible it is, because there's a lot of people who feel like they've broken through their conditioning into the last thing. But this is a forever process, and starting from who you are is the place to start, and then you get to choose your adventure.